All right, we'll take a look at Chapter 2, Section 2 on the space program. The learning target is to identify major events in human exploration of space. Make sure you do your corrections, turn in your GR when it's all done, and add to the classwork, please. Let me just change this little detail. Page 48 to page 52. All right, let's get started. The letter of the first artificial satellite launched into space was Sputnik 1. Very kind of basic looking satellite. A satellite is any natural or artificial object that revolves around an object in space. So technically the moon is a satellite of the Earth, but there's hundreds, thousands of satellites that revolve around the Earth up in the upper exosphere. How did the United States respond to the launch of the first artificial satellite by the Soviet Union? By speeding up its own space program and establishing a government agency in charge of its space program, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA. Let's see, so that kind of started the space race. The Soviets were our enemies, our arch enemies, and after World War II. And when they started making these advances in space, then we were like, oh my gosh, we got to get our act together. So we started NASA. The name of the first satellite launched by the United States was Explorer 1. And true or false, first American space is John Glenn. That was false. It was Scott Carpenter. Or Alan Shepard. I'm sorry, Alan Shepard. My bad. All right, continue. 6. Complete the following table of major events in the space race. 1957, Soviets launched Sputnik. 58, United States launched Explorer. 61, Soviets launched the first human in space, Yuri Gagarin. And 61, Alan Shepard was the first American in space. So the Soviets were winning the space race early on. They had the first satellite, they had the first human, and we were a step behind. How these events illustrate the meaning of space race. A race is a competition. The better one performs, the harder the other tries. When the Soviets put a satellite into orbit, this motivated the U.S. to accelerate its space program. Soviets and Americans competed in sending satellites and astronauts into orbit and spacecraft to explore the moon. The Apollo program was the U.S. effort to land astronauts on the moon. It was started by President John Kennedy. In the early 60s, he kind of put the challenge out there. We need to have somebody on the moon by the end of the 60s. And he was assassinated. So he didn't see that accomplishment come true, but Apollo 11 astronauts in the late 60s landed on the moon, one of the great achievements in human history. Spacecraft Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Or actually, Apollo 11 didn't land on the moon, but that carried the astronauts to the moon. And then it was the Eagle, I believe, that actually landed on the moon. Who was the first person to walk on the moon? That was Neil Armstrong. And what did he say? He said, OMG! No, he just said, very classy. He said, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. 11, letter of each statement is true about Apollo missions. Astronauts used lunar rovers to explore the moon's surface, these little like dune buggy things. And Apollo astronauts contributed to our knowledge of the moon's structure. They took samples of rocks and they did all kinds of experiments on the moon to figure out what was going on up there. Moon rocks are lunar samples collected by Apollo astronauts. They are similar to Earth rocks because they contain the same minerals as Earth rocks. They're different because some are made up of rock types different from those found on Earth. So that led to our understanding of the moon as containing material that used to exist on Earth. And when we talk about where did the moon come from, In part, it came from Earth. What did scientists learn from creating artificial moonquakes? They learned that the moon probably has a small core of molten rock at its center. Following sentence, true or false? The moon has natural moonquakes that are weaker than earthquakes on Earth. That's true. One reason for recent renewed interest in the moon. New technology can make the moon's natural resources available for use on Earth. The moon could be used as a base to launch an eventual mission to Mars. That's all we've got here for the space program. So make your corrections and turn that in, and you can move on to level 2.